Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, it is another movie review. It, of course, is of the 1997 film directed by James Mangold, starring Sylvester Stallone, Robert De Niro, Harvey Keitel, Ray Liotta, among others. It, of course, is Copland. I gave you a chance to be a real cop, and you blew it! A little line one of my friends always likes to use. You blew it! This, of course, is a Patreon request from my good buddy John. This was actually last month's Patreon request. Sadly, he didn't get a chance to get it to me before the month ended, which is why, if you're actually looking at the clock, you're like, wait a minute, it's a little late. So you're going to be seeing two of them from him this month. This is last month's and this month's. This one is last month's, and because of the timing, I also didn't get a chance to record it when I wanted to, but you know what they say is a wise Hispanic one said, well, better late than never. Now, before I get too far into it, just a reminder, if you do want to support the channel, you can always join the Patreon or go through the PayPal route. PayPal is if you just want to do one-off request or one-off support of the channel. If you want to continuously support the channel and be able to request videos like this, join the Patreon. Depending on the tier, you'll get access to videos early and also be able to suggest a certain number of topics for future videos, including commentaries if that's your thing. Either way, your support is appreciated. Now, this is a neo-noir crime film. Has a little bit of some Western leanings at times. And it's an interesting film choice when you look at Stallone. Now, at this time in his career, I don't know if you would say he was in a slump, but he definitely had fallen from where he was in the mid to late 80s when you could say he's at the height. I'm actually going to bring up his filmography right here so we can actually see just what type of slump I'm talking about. Let's see. 90, he did Rocky V, which is the one he really hates. He gives it a 0. Then he did Oscar, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Cliffhanger was a jump up. Demolition Man, a jump up. And he did Judge Dredd, which a lot of people hate. I don't mind it. He did Daylight. Got an Oscar nod there. An Alan Smithy film he did after this. So it looks like kind of a little bit of a slump. Like, he does a couple bad films people don't like, good one. A couple films people don't like, good one. Daylight I've heard decent things about. I'll give it a watch. I think it's over there on the wall. Of course, this little slump thing would also continue a little bit into the 2000s, and then he did Rocky Balboa and Rambo, and that really got him back up there, but it seems like he always does a few good ones and goes down a little bit depending on who you ask. Now, this is the type of film you look at in Stallone's career, and it doesn't kind of seem like the one he would do. But it's a good choice for him, and that's because it gives him a chance to flex his acting muscle a little bit more, not just his hardened action hero persona. And I have to say, he does give a good performance in this. He was really into character. He actually did gain a little bit of a light, skinny fat type of belly for this role as the town sheriff. And he actually did that by eating a lot of pancakes, according to IMDb. And if I remember right, he actually worked for SAG Scale for this film because it did have a tight budget. I mean, $15 million for a film with this many stars. I mean, you got just Stallone and De Niro alone. He threw in Keitel and Liotta among a handful of others. Got a decent amount of star power, so yeah, him working for Scale makes sense. You know, when an actor of Stallone's rank works for Scale, they really want to make that film. Now, he's made other good films, this Mangold, the director. He did Girl Interrupted after this, film I still need to watch. Kate and Leopold. He did Walk the Line, which I remember enjoying. The remake of 3:10 to Yuma. And, of course, he did the two better Wolverine solo films. The Wolverine and, of course, Logan. Of course, he also did Ford vs. Ferrari, and he's supposed to be directing the next Indiana Jones film. And given how he handles these type of films, I could definitely see him being a decent successor to Spielberg in that regard, but probably won't feel the same, because you kind of lose something when the person who directed the previous ones is not fully involved anymore. Now, the main action of the film takes place in the town of Garrison, New Jersey, which is across the water from New York City. And a lot of police from NYPD's 37th Precinct live there, which in real life would not be allowed because New York police officers actually have to live in the state of New York, and the end of the credits even mentions that. But, you know, it's one of those things that without that, no plot. You got to let something go. You got a lot of people who work there, who live there. A good amount of the main cops we see. Now, one night, we see the sheriff and Ray Liotta's character, who is Gary Figgis, hanging out at a bar in the town. You know, they're like, hey, where's everybody else? Because it's a cop bar. I mean, most of the people in the town are cops, so any bar there's going to be a cop bar by default when you think about it. They're in the city proper having a party. Now, one person whose nickname is Superboy, who's played by Michael Rappaport, he leaves the party a little drunk, but he's still soberish enough to drive. He starts driving, gets into a little minor vehicle altercation with the vehicle with these two young black kids, and one of them pulls out what he thinks is a gun, so he gets out his own gun and follows them and starts firing. Well, it turns out it was one of those clubs. For those of you who didn't grow up in the 90s, you don't know what the club is. It's this little contraption that you attach to your wheel and lock it so that if somebody were to break into your vehicle, even if they could hotwire it, if they can't remove the club, they can't turn the wheel, which means driving the vehicle is useless. My abuela had one for her car. I mean, it was an Oldsmobile with a lot of vehicle problems, but still, you know, it's the principle of the thing. You don't really see that many people buy them anymore unless they had them, but it is there. Nice little relic in case you don't know. Now, that's what they were pointing at them because they looked like they were high. Now, a lot of the cops are like, yeah, it's not going to do that. And a couple people try to plant evidence, one of them. I'm glad that cop actually got called out by the EMT guys. Like, that wasn't there. And because of that and some other weird stuff involving the case, it's obviously this cop is going to he's going to get investigated by IED and probably brought up on charges. Which, of course, given his nickname as Superboy, should tell you that he really has a reputation within the department. And he's also the nephew of Harvey Keitel's character, Ray, who is one of the senior officers in the department and one of the oldest cops that lives over in Garrison. So it looks like Superboy commits suicide, but he's actually just squirreled away so that they can hide him till what they say the heat dies down. Now, of course, they just squirrel him away to Garrison, and from there, we learn a little bit more about Stallone's character. He apparently, Freddy, that's his name, wanted to be a member of the NYPD ever since he was young. But when he was young, he saved a lady who was trapped in a vehicle that went over the bridge and into the water. He got down there and got her out of there, but he was underwater so long, he went deaf in one ear. Which is something I do identify with a lot. While I'm not fully hard of hearing in this ear, it is affected by the fact that I had swimmer's ear a lot as a kid. If you don't know what swimmer's ear is, it's essentially a lighter version of what Stallone's character goes through, because he goes almost completely deaf in that ear. You can still hear a little bit, but not enough to pass the test. But with swimmer's ear, it is essentially you get a lot of ear infections from swimming, hence its name. Now for me, because they had to put tubes and stuff in it, it does affect my hearing a little bit, but not a lot. I can still hear a lot. This is my better ear, obviously. The only downside with this one is at certain frequencies, it's like, ouch! More so certain high-pitched ones. And I think I'm also starting to get a little bit of tinnitus in that ear, because every now and then I do hear like a weird high-pitched thing. It has to do with loud sounds, too. Might be why my abuela actually had me put cotton in my ears when we went to the movie theaters when I was younger, but could be another reason, too. Could be my ADHD and very, very young sensory issues. Now I'm going to get back on track with the plot. Freddy, because of that, he hasn't been able to join. He's been trying for a decade to join, but he can't. So the closest he can get to being a cop is being the elected sheriff of this town. So he's law enforcement, but he's not like an actual cop. Now, with the town being mostly cops, he does kind of look the other way when it comes to the cops speeding and all that, which I get to a point, but at the same time, you should be telling them, like, guys, hey, you guys got to set an example. You can't just be doing all that. Well, in comes Robert De Niro's character, Mo, who is an IED cop, so he does work for internal affairs, making sure the cops don't do stuff. He has some issues regarding the whole George Washington Bridge incident, and he thinks that Superboy might have been spirited away because they never found a body. They found a shoe, but they never found a body. And he knows a lot of the people he's investigating live in Garrison, so he approaches Stallone, having him have a talk, and Fred, kind of blows him off a little bit. Because they're like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. Because why would he? It's one of those things like, why would he help? At least at a point that Internal Affairs wants him to. Because he has a good amount of respect for all the cops and all that. Well, eventually something happens with Gary, Leota's character's house. It burns down, and his intended is in there, and she dies because of the fire, which really does set him at odds. And you can definitely tell his character is conflicted throughout the rest of the story, which leads into the ending part. When he comes back, you're like, yeah, go Gary, show him, show him, show him. Now, throughout most of the film, in between that, Freddy is with his conflicted loyalties. The loyalties to the cops, who are kind of his friends and acquaintances, and his loyalties to the law that he wants to try to enforce with the career he has and the career he wanted, and trying to be a good cop, which of course culminates in that scene I quoted at the beginning, and you blew it! Give you to be a child, and you blew it! Now in that scene, he is trying to do the right thing by going in and talking to De Niro in his office, but he's like, yeah, we're forced to close the case. It's too late, you blew it. 2 weeks ago we had a case, but you blew it, you waited too long. Well, Freddy investigates it, and he does eventually find Superboy, and he's going to take him in. Now, he does a stupid thing. This is a Ned Stark moment. For those of you who didn't watch my Game of Thrones reviews or have not watched the show, the character Ned Stark in Game of Thrones is honorable to a fault. You can understand that he would want to hold to his principles. I mean, there's a lot of characters throughout history who've done that, but is at the detriment of being smart. Now, but for Ned, you can see it's his own conscience and all that, that he can't be super ruthless like some of his ancestors and some of the other people that play the game. Here, Freddy's doing it because of his mixed loyalties and the fact that he wants to at least give Ray, I owe you this much, at least Ray. But it is a stupid thing, and I saw like this can come back to bite you in the butt, and I was right. Because Freddy basically tells Ray he has Superboy and what he's going to do. And then the next morning when he goes to take Superboy in, he gets jumped, which leads to the ending part. Which, this is a part that definitely feels out of a Western. The jailbreak to get the guy out, and then the sheriff and his buddies having to go back in and get the guy. A nice little shootout. This is the moment of the film where it becomes action-y, and it fits the whole thing. And I do like how it's shot because of the fact of them exploiting Freddy's deafness in this scene. And Stallone plays it beautifully as somebody who is used to just hearing with one ear, now has to go with no vision and all that, and then freaking out whenever someone approaches him, he's not sure who it is. And of course, with a shotgun, he handles it pretty well. I mean, this is post the first 3 Rambo films and a bunch of other action films he's done, so of course he's going to be able to handle the shotgun pretty well. And then switch quickly to the handgun. But he also plays it off as somebody who doesn't have as much training as the character's supposed to have. I mean, he hasn't been through the military, he hasn't been through police training, at least like the other ones are, but he still handled the gun enough to know how to pull it and how to aim and all that. And the blood squibs and all that definitely fits it. And all the acting from our characters, Keitel, Leota, De Niro, Berg, Robert Patrick's even in there as one of the other police officers, which is a nice little shot. Like, nice to see him playing another bad guy cop. Of course, this one's not going to be looking for John Connor. Of course, Rappaport, I told you, is Superboy. I mean, you got another one. We got Noah Emmerich, we got Kathy Marina, John Spencer, even Frank Vincent's in there, which is nice to see De Niro and Vincent in there. I think this is the 3rd time they've worked together. Of course, the other 2 films would be Martin Scorsese ones. Of course, Casino, a film that after working in Casino for a couple years, I can never watch the same way again. And then, of course, the other one with his famous line where he told a certain short New Jersey actor to go home and get his shine box. That's right, of course, he's the one who played Billy Bats. I'm looking through the other one. That's about it when it comes to the big ones. There's some other ones in there. The cinematography was done by Eric Allen Edwards, and it's a pretty decent cinematography, especially when working with James Mangold. Definitely fits the whole vibe of it. And watching it, I miss the style of lighting from the 80s and 90s, where for nighttime they had the little blue filter. I love that. I don't really see that much anymore. I really hope it makes a comeback. Howard Shore did the score, and he's always a master of film scores, and the score he did for this film definitely fits the neo-noir type vibe of it with a little bit of the western leaning. And of course, this is a Miramax film, but this was when Miramax, if I remember right, was owned by Disney. So it's always interesting to see the films that were made by Miramax when Disney had their stake in it. And of course, there's a Miramax book and all that. Now, there's some special features on the DVD I haven't watched them yet. There's some deleted scenes. There's a shootout storyboard sequence, and then, of course, the behind-the-scenes featurette, the making of an urban western. That should be an interesting thing to watch, especially to see Stallone and everybody else talk about it. I'm assuming Stallone talked about it, because this seems like a type of film he'd be proud of and would really want to talk about, other than Rocky V, where he'd be like, yeah, I don't like it. I need to do over again. Now, this film did have a lot of critical praise when it came out. It has a 76% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't really like bringing that up, but this is the consensus, and I want to see what you all think about it. Copland gifts its star-studded cast with richly imagined characters while throttling the audience with carefully ratcheted suspense, although the plot lacks the moral complexity of the crime classics that it harkens to. I would disagree with that. There is complexity, mainly with what the character Freddy wants to do, because he's the heart and soul of this film. The rest of the characters, you could see some of the moral complexity there, but it's aligned with what their characters are already doing. The cops that are corrupt, they're still corrupt cops, and they're just going through the moral thing of trying to cover their own butts. Superboy, scared crapless because of what's happening around him, and all the other characters weaving in and out of the plots. So they're as complex as they need to be given the plot. It's Freddy that has the most depth to it. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's putting the words there in a way to make it sound smarter than it is at the end without realizing, like, yeah, technically it does not align with it. And now, Ebert did not give it a good score, but you guys all know what my feelings are on Ebert, but I gotta read. Here's what he said. There's a rough balance between how long a movie is, how deep it goes, and how much it can achieve. The balance is not found in Copland, and the result is too much movie for the running time. And I could tell you just from reading that, Ebert is full of crap there. I mean, he gave it 2 out of 4, which is a mid-score, but it's like, yeah, this is not one of those movies where its length and how deep it goes is not balanced. The movie's a little under 2 hours, and that's the perfect length for this type of film. I watch it as a film about corrupt cops living on the other side of the water and the sheriff trying to bring him in. It doesn't need to be more deep than it already is. This is one of those things where Ebert, and of course his 2 partners that he had, Siskel, Ebert, and Roper, and all that. It's like, yeah. And it's one of those times where I can agree that his partner was right. This is one of those films that Siskel and Ebert argued about, because I guess Siskel said it's one to be savored. I think those are the times it was more fun to watch, and was when they disagreed rather than they were like, oh yes, 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 being like the old yes man with each other. Oh yes, yes, yes. But if you guys forgetting why I don't really agree with them, is because they always give like certain genres of films a hard time, mainly horror films. I know some people are gonna go, well, horror films don't deserve to be praised. Yeah, there are horror films that deserve to be praised. I mean, they did give certain ones praise, like The Exorcist and all that, but other times there are ones where you gotta... I'm not going to say grade on a curve, but you're not going to grade every film on the same scale. You're not going to grade a film like Maniac on the same scale as The Godfather. You make of that what you will. Now, as you can tell from how I'm praising this film, this definitely comes with the Mar stamp of approval. If you have the DVD, give it a watch. Every other thing, you give it a watch. Now I haven't watched it, but I just saw something that mentions the deleted scene, so I'm going to talk about it. They show just how racist the town could be, which ties in, of course, with the scene with the shooting. One of them was all the resident police officers chasing down a pair of black motorists, and the other shows a deputy pointing out that the majority of tickets issued to go to black motorists on charges that suggest racial profiling. I could definitely see why they deleted both of those. I mean, the whole thing about some of the cops being a little racist might have already been established, and it's better to keep a subtext and actually show, especially since this is a couple years after a certain beating in LA. That was one of those things where show not tell. The implication is better than actually spell out going in the face of the camera. Not really much else to talk about with it. I mean, I didn't really do a lot of notes for this, so sorry about that, guys. But because I just skimmed through IMDb, but it's a very fun film. Definitely one I wish I had watched earlier. I mean, I saw bits and pieces of it on AMC one time when they showed it, but now having the DVD, it's definitely a film that's going to be in my rotation of rewatches. And I'll probably do a tribute to it one day down the road. I just got to pick the perfect song to go with this film. So, John, thanks again for another request of a film you knew I probably was going to enjoy. Like I was saying, if you haven't seen the film, go and watch it. It's worth it alone just to see Stallone flex his acting muscle a little bit, especially working with De Niro and the others. And, of course, for that immortal, and you blew it! Meme moment. Till next time, guys.